I'm Danielle Hale, Chief Economist at Realtor.com. As pumpkins migrate from the patch to your porch, I'll cover the available economic data, which is still limited by the ongoing federal government shutdown. I'll share findings from the Realtor.com September rental report, which has implications for housing inflation, and dig in specifically on New York City rents. I'll highlight findings from a survey of Gen Z and discuss what the most recent week's housing data and mortgage rates tell us about the market. Finally, we're past the very best time to buy nationwide, but conditions are still good and even at their best in some markets. I'll highlight where buyers can still find peak conditions. First, the federal government shutdown has now passed the 2-week mark, interrupting data releases and likely delaying some home closings. The September inflation report that was originally scheduled for this week will be released next Friday. While it's hard to say what the overall trend will be, I expect that housing inflation will have continued to cool. Why do I expect this? The September Realtor.com rental report showed another month of easing asking rents, which are now down 3.2% from their 2022 peak. This will help cool housing inflation. This drop in rents has also modestly improved housing affordability nationwide, and particularly in Austin, Texas, the new most affordable rental market when we compare rents with local incomes. In contrast, median asking rent in the New York metro area exceeds the recommended 30% threshold for the typical household, and within the city, rents continue to climb in the third quarter. This is one reason why housing affordability has been a prominent issue in the New York City mayoral election. In fact, soaring rents mean that a household with a monthly budget matching the typical Manhattan rent could afford to buy an above-median priced home in 4 nearby cities that are popular with New York-based home shoppers. In a recent survey of Gen Z homeowners and hopefuls, the generation reports feeling challenged but undaunted by the housing market. Even as 82% say buying a home is harder for their generation, nearly 3/4 of those surveyed are actively saving for a down payment on a home, showing ambition that I expect will ultimately pay off. In weekly housing data, we saw an uptick in newly listed homes relative to recent weeks that could signal more engagement from sellers. It was enough to prompt a modest uptick in active listings growth and even median listing prices, which still remain little changed from last year. Mortgage rates eased lower this week, marking a 6th week under 6.5%, which may help explain recent seller interest. Lower rates could improve home sales even without an uptick in seller interest, given current inventory levels. But the government shutdown may be an offsetting, if temporary, drag on overall transaction activity. The NAHB Wells Fargo Housing Market Index, a measure of builder confidence, improved in October as current new home sales, expected sales, and buyer traffic all improved. This data suggests that single-family permits also increased modestly in September, although we won't have this data that's typically published by the Census Bureau each month to know for sure until the government reopens. Finally, we're just wrapping up the best time to buy nationwide, but conditions are still pretty good in most major metros. In a handful of markets, shoppers can even anticipate the peak next week. You can find all the details, including full reports and our housing data for download, at Realtor.com/research. You can also follow us on X, formerly Twitter, for real-time updates and Instagram for graphics.